Hi, welcome to Managed Book Corner. I'm Amanda, and we are officially in 2022. For my ABC Reading Challenge, January's theme is translations. So for this video, I thought I'd share some recommendations of books that were translated, and I'm also going to share what my TBR is for January. So I'll start with a few books that I've already read that were translated. First up is The Time in Between by Maria Duenas. I read this about 5 or 6 years ago. It's translated from Spanish, the author is from Spain, and this book takes place during the Spanish Civil War and World War II. It follows this young woman who travels from Spain to Morocco, and through a series of unexpected events, she ends up working as a sort of spy that helps get information to the Allies during the war. So it's a really interesting book. It has to do with espionage, but it also has great character growth, and I really loved it, and I think you would love it too. Another book I read some years ago is The Shadow of the Wind by Ruiz, Zafon. And he's also a Spanish author, and this also takes place kind of during the Spanish Civil War and the early years of Franco, but it also goes back a little bit farther in time too, earlier into the 1900s. Just over a year ago, I decided to reread this book, and I also read its 3 sequels. There are 4 books in the series, so after The Shadow of the Wind, there's The Angel's Game, The Prisoner of Heaven, which is a shorter one, and finally, The Labyrinth of the Spirits, which is an 800-page book, but worth the read. That whole series is called The Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and it's a really great series if you want to get to know Spain, specifically Barcelona, and also get a look at books and their authors and the mysteries surrounding them. Another book I read some years ago is The Guest Cat by Takashi Hirade. This is a really cute book that was translated from Japanese, and it's about a couple and this cat who comes into their lives. It's a really short book, only 136 pages, so it's easy to squeeze in and read in just a day or two. I thought it was a really sweet book, and actually I've noticed recently that there seems to be a lot of books that are translated from Japanese that have to do with cats. There are several books that I am aware of, and I haven't collected all of them, but I am going to be reading some of them and then probably collecting the rest of them. I'll talk more about those in a little bit, but if you love cats, it seems like Japanese literature is great for your love of felines. A book I just read a few months ago is The Madwoman's Ball by Victorian. This is another short book. It's just barely 200 pages, and it's translated from French. It takes place in Paris in the late 1800s, and it follows these women who are put into an asylum, and it's very hard for them to get out. And it offers a feminist perspective on women and how it was so easy for them to be put into an asylum like this, and so hard to get out of it. It also has interesting commentary on religion and faith, and what is considered acceptable to believe versus what is not considered acceptable. So it's a really interesting book, and it packs in a lot despite its short length. It's also been made into a movie that just came out recently. It's in French, but it's definitely worth watching. The book and the movie are pretty different, so I think it's actually worth it to engage with both. Another book I just read recently is The Chestnut Man by Søren Spielstrup. This is a great crime thriller. It's set in Denmark, and it follows the serial killer who leaves behind these little men made out of chestnuts at each of his crime scenes. It follows the perspective of these 2 detectives as they work to unravel this case, but it has a lot of layers to it. So it's a longer book, over 500 pages, but the chapters are really short, so it gives it a really fast pace. So if you like something that's a little bit more crime thrillery, a little bit gory at times, this is a fun one to read. And this one has also been made into a Netflix miniseries, so it's worth watching that as well. If you're into thrillers, there's a lot of really great ones coming out of Scandinavia. Some that I've seen are The Tenant and The Butterfly House. There's also The Golden Cage. There's a lot of really interesting books. I haven't collected them yet, but I do plan to read them at some point. My TBR is too long, as I mentioned in my previous video, but I would like to eventually get to all the books that have tickled my fancy. Carrying on with the thriller theme, there's also some great ones coming out of Spain. Haven't read the rest of these yet, but they're on my shelves, and so I feel okay recommending them. One is The Silence of the White City by Eva Garcia Sáenz. I believe this book is set in País Vasco, which is a region in the north of Spain, and this is the first in a trilogy. I got this one some months ago, and it's about 500 pages, but I figured that if I like it, I will go ahead and get the other 2 in the trilogy. It looks like a great one, and it seems like it draws on mythology from the region in País Vasco. Another one that I just picked up recently is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones by Olga Tokarsuk. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. I don't speak Polish, but this is translated from Polish and is set in a Polish village, and it follows a woman who's into dark astrology, and suddenly some people start being killed in the area where she lives, and she inserts herself into the investigation even though she is not a police investigator. So this looks like a really interesting and weird one, and I'm hoping that I can get to it this month. We'll see. Alright, so continuing with some of the Northern and Eastern European region, another book that's been on my shelf and I keep planning to read and somehow keeps not happening is Anxious People by Frederick Bachmann. So I've really only heard good things about this since it came out. It seems like it's a pretty beloved book. My husband read it and he also enjoyed it, and I don't know why I haven't gotten to it yet. I keep meaning to. But it is a book that's about these people who are in an unexpected hostage situation, but then things kind of go in a different direction than you might expect. I hear that it's very funny, but also has some emotional depth to it as well. This one has also just been turned into a miniseries, and so it's probably worth watching that as well. Haven't seen it yet because I wanted to read the book first. Also, Frederick Bachmann has a lot of novels, all translated from his native Swedish, and so he's definitely an author that you can look into and get several books by. Another book that I got last year and I'm really excited to read is called The Widow Queen by Elżbieta Cerisinska. This one is translated from Polish, and it's a big novel, and it goes back to the 10th century. This is an epic that follows a woman who becomes a queen, and I think it's based on a real person as well, if I'm not mistaken. So this book looks really interesting and like a different take on history that I've never learned before. It's a bigger book, about 500 pages, but I think it's definitely worth reading, and I can't wait to dive in. I'll definitely be getting to this at some point this year. If not this month, then before the year is over, I will have read it for sure. Another book I got recently is called Bola by Pajtim Statovci. Not sure if I pronounced that right. So this book is set in Kosovo, and although the author is originally from Kosovo and raised by Albanian parents, it's actually translated from Finnish, which is where he relocated to. It follows a man who is married to a woman, but in the 1990s he starts up an affair with another man. This looks like a really interesting book, and I'm actually interested in reading this author's other books as well. His other books are called Crossing, and I love this title, My Cat Yugoslavia. Don't know what it's about, but I want to read them both. So once I've read this book, which is only a little bit over 200 pages, so it's a pretty quick read, I think. But once I've gotten through this one, assuming I like it, I'll probably go back and get his other books as well. If you want to know about a book that I'm completely intimidated to read, it's this one. The Eighth Life by Nina Haratus. This book is huge. It's about 1,000 pages. I don't think I've ever read a book that's 1,000 pages long, but here we are. It's translated from German, and it follows several generations of a family who lives in Georgia. The country, not the US state, so don't get confused. But this book looks really interesting, and it looks like it'll offer a great immersive experience into Georgia, their culture, their history, and what their people are like. I personally know basically nothing about Georgia, but I'm really interested in learning about the country, and I've always said I like to learn about countries and get to know them, get to know their kind of identity through fiction. So I think this will be an interesting book to read. I'm not sure when I'll get to it because it is, like I said, it's 1,000 pages long. But if you're feeling ambitious, this is a great one that I think you should look into. And if you like it, let me know what you think. Here's another book that I'm kind of intimidated to read, Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. This is a classic from a Spanish author. It was written hundreds of years ago. I think I've heard that it's the first or one of the first novels written. It's another long one. It's about 900 pages, which again is a lot longer than most books I read. But I really do want to read it. I've said before that my favorite country is Spain. I lived in Spain for about a year, and I just really love that country, and I feel kind of bad that I haven't read their original flagship novel. So I keep planning to read it. I don't know when I will, but maybe I should just set aside a couple months to read these giant novels and get them off my list. But this is one that is a classic, and probably for good reason, so we'll see. Another big novel that's a classic is Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Another classic that I have not read. It's over 700 pages long, and this one's translated from Russian, by the way. Definitely one that I've been hoping to get to. My husband actually bought this for himself because he felt inspired to read some classics. I don't think he actually read it. That's normal. I do that all the time too. But hopefully at some point one of us or both of us will read this book. Some more modern classics might include novels by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I have this lovely edition of Love in the Time of Cholera. I have not read it, but it looks beautiful. It's illustrated. He has several other books that are also classics that are probably worth reading. But if you want some books that are translated from South American authors, this is a good one. He's from Colombia. And so I definitely plan to read this and a few of his other bigger novels at some point. Another prolific author from South America is Isabellande. She's from Chile. I don't know what it is about her, but I keep collecting her books even though I haven't read any of them yet. I think I have 5 books by her now, and I don't know why I keep buying them but not reading them. I don't know what that means. But I have several physical ones on my shelf, so I'll show you. One is In the Mist of Winter. It's also The Japanese Lover. One that I'm very much planning to read this year is A Long Petal of the Sea. I'll probably be reading this in May with my Spain theme, because it does start off in Spain, although it ends up in Chile. Another book that's coming out this month in January by her is Violeta. So that one's another one that I would recommend if you can get it in time to read before the January's over. That could be another great translation book to read. And then if you want to go to Peru, where my husband comes from, Their famous author is Mario Vargas Yosa. So I have a couple of his books. My husband just read both of them actually. He read this one about a year ago. One is Aunt Julie and the Scriptwriter, and the other is The Bad Girl. I plan to read this one, The Bad Girl, in January. My husband just read both of them and he thinks I would like this one more, so I'm planning to read this one. It's about an enigmatic girl who, I don't know what she's doing actually, but he also has a new one that just came out recently called Harsh Times. I don't know exactly what it's about, but that's a new one if you want to read his latest novel. Another book I'm planning to read soon, probably in May, is called Remember Me by Mario Escobar. This is another Spanish author, and it follows these two kids who leave during the Spanish Civil War and end up in Mexico. Alright, so let's end this video with a few books I actually plan to read this month. My own TBR, at least in terms of the January translations theme. So I already mentioned that I'm planning to read The Bad Girl by Mario Vargas Llosa. I'm also hoping that I'll get to Drive Your Plow Over the Bones. Not sure, but I'm hoping I will. If not, I'll get to it before the end of the year. So here's a few more books that I plan to read this month. One is The City of Mist by Carlos Ruiz Zafon. I mentioned already that I read his series, the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series. Sadly, Carlos Ruiz Zafon, he passed away in 2020. This is his last work of fiction that was published posthumously. The English translation just came out in November, so I'm going to be reading this one during January. It's a really slim collection of short stories, only 162 pages, so this should be one that you can squeeze in pretty easily, but I am planning to read this. Another book that I plan to read is Life Begins on Friday by Iwana Parvalescu. This is actually translated from Romanian. My sister went to Romania a few years ago and she bought this for me while she was there in Bucharest, and I've been planning to read this. It's set at the end of the 19th century and it's a slim novel, only about 300 pages, but according to the cover, it's a winner of the European Union Prize for Literature, so it's gotta be a good one, right? So I'm excited to read this one. Thank you to my sister for that. I also have 2 audiobooks I'm planning to listen to. Actually, I started one of them. I am listening to The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. I mentioned already that Japan seems to have a great tradition of cat-related literature, and this is one of them. It's translated from Japanese, and it follows this cat and the different people that come into his life. So I'm enjoying it so far. This cat's snarky. I'm enjoying it. So I'll let you know more about that once I finish it and have my review up in a few weeks. Carrying on with that theme is a book called The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa. It's translated from Japanese as well, and I actually bought the physical book. It hasn't arrived yet, but I did order it, so I'm hoping I can read that one this month. And finally, I plan to listen to the audiobook version of At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop. Now this author is actually from Senegal. Unfortunately, this is my only book that's actually representing Africa. I was looking for other books from African authors that are in translation. I didn't find very many, and I don't have very many on my shelves. It seems that most of the African authors that I have seem to have written their books in English. So if you actually know of other African authors who write their books in a different language and then it's translated to English, let me know. I would love to know about those. But anyway, this one, At Night All Blood is Black, this one is set during World War I, and it follows a Senegalese soldier who's fighting in the war, and he starts doing some creepy, murderous stuff. I don't know too much about it, but it looks really interesting, and it looks like it's a rather short novel as well. So I'm going to be listening to that later this month, and you'll hear more in my review. So I recognize that this list was rather Eurocentric and Spanish language centric, so I'm sorry about that. But there are definitely translated novels from around the world, from all different continents and many different countries, that are definitely worth reading. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know what they are. I would love to hear what other translated novels you've read and loved, or which ones are on your list that you plan to read. So I hope that you participate in my January theme of reading books that are in translation. Let me know what you read. I'd love to know what you pick out and how you like it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And to make sure you don't miss any more of my videos, please ring the bell to get all my notifications. I'll be publishing videos like this one about once a week, and I also put out book review videos once or twice every week as well. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!